there's a smoke show.
For the sake of getting to the featured presentation, I've decided to move the NASCAR Fantasy Report towards the end of the video. If you feel like you're missing out on tradition, I'll put start times in the description so you can watch that before you get to the featured presentation. So without any filler ahead, it's time to get onto the heart and soul of this episode. In terms of NASCAR's future prospects, nobody has revved the engines of the public eye even remotely close to Hailie Deegan. Everywhere you scroll on social media, you see her guest starring on YouTube shows, talking with Dale Earnhardt Jr. on his podcast, and showing her vibrant character on Instagram and Twitter.
Transform!
Not to mention, she's a pretty skilled racer behind the wheel. Differing from female racers before her, the California native has become a superstar on the K&N circuit, winning races and competing at a top-tier level. So with her rise to fame, it's time to analyze the hype and faith given to the young teenager. What makes her so special to NASCAR's faithful, and could she truly be that next game-changing face in the sport? Or is this just a bunch of nonsense and she is destined to become a bigger bust than Danica Patrick? Before this video begins, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for new uploads all season long. In order to fully analyze Hailie Deegan and her hype potential, we must first take a drive through history. As the daughter of X Games champion Brian Deegan, Hailie has been able to write a brand new chapter for the family name. She took to racing dirt bikes and off-road rally cars to begin her roots in racing, most notably winning the 2016 Lucas Oil Driver of the Year award. Even with those successes, Deegan transitioned to asphalt driving Legends cars for REV Racing. She eyed a new challenge, and it was greatly rewarded just a season later. Hailie Deegan would become one of 9 names recognized as the 2017 NASCAR Next Class, acting as the youngest and the only female member that season. This program pretty much highlights the potential prospects on the horizon, with names such as Chase Elliott, Eric Jones, and Ryan Blaney among the many NASCAR Cup stars to get the recognition. During that same calendar year, she would also sign with Toyota Racing as a development driver for the long-term future. Her big break, however, came at the hands of K&N Series owner Bill McNally. His operation, headquartered in Roseville, California, has been the class of the K&N Series field since 1992, winning 8 drivers' championships across that timeline. Brendan Gaughan and Todd Gilliland are the most notable champions, as both advanced into NASCAR's top divisions after those glorious accomplishments. As for Hailie Deegan, she would pilot the number 19 Toyota Camry in the K&N West Series with some funding from Monster Energy and Napa Auto Parts. Most certainly, she was going to electrify the racing circuit and prove that women have a place behind the wheel of a NASCAR stock car. Unlike the female racers before her, Hailie Deegan backed up the potential with results and great performances. She was extremely consistent as a rookie driver, finishing inside the top 10 86% of the time. And this was with a crew chief carousel between Joe Draper, Ty Joyner, and Kevin Reed Jr. Her breakthrough moment, however, occurred on September 29, 2018. On the final lap under the lights of the Meridian Speedway, she used the bumper on her teammate Cole Rouse to take the lead and score the victory in thrilling fashion. It was glorious, as she became the first woman to win a NASCAR K&N event and the first female winner since Shauna Robinson. When the 14-race campaign came to a close, she ended with that 1 win, 5 top 5s, 12 top 10 finishes, an average finish of 7.7, and she claimed the Rookie of the Year honors with her 5th place points finish. Definitely a promising start for Hailie Deegan, and if she continues to grow and develop, these successes will only get elevated to another level. Here in 2019, there has been no sophomore slump, back to reality, and the California racer has continued to craft her NASCAR image. She has earned 2 wins on the year, 5 top 5s, 6 top 10s, an average finish of 5.1, and she resides second in the point standings behind teammate Derek Kraus. Meanwhile, she's also gotten her feet wet into the ARCA Menard Series, as she has driven the number 55 IK9 Toyota Camry for Venturini Motorsports. Her statistics through 4 races haven't been earth-shattering, scoring 2 top 10s, an average finish of 11.2, and 2 DNFs. Even with the middling results, she hasn't completely flopped at this next level. When she moves from the K&N Series to full-time ARCA, you should see more top 5s and more top 10s in the cards. Certainly, looking at her statistics and potential, as well as her wealthy family, the sky is the limit for Hailie Deegan. So at the end of the day, is the early hype for the young teenager truly justified? Honestly, this answer can go in both directions. With her off-road background and development in K&N, Hailie Deegan has colored herself as an aggressive racer who bows down to nobody. Starting out on the K&N circuit, this was her Achilles heel, especially with the lack of experience on the local short tracks. Many of the veteran drivers knocked her around, and it most certainly costed her some track position at the end of the race. Instead of whining and crying about getting raced too hard, Hailie Deegan changed her mentality halfway through the campaign. No longer would she worry about tearing up the nose or roughing up a few feathers. She was going to race hard and aggressive to get the silver hardware. It has paid off tremendously, as all three of her victories came by roughing up the leader and coming up clutch on the final circuit. She contrasts greatly from my favorite driver Chase Elliott, as while he's a consistent driver, you don't see the Di9 driver make aggressive moves very often. He's gotten roughed up on restarts, specifically by Ricky Stenhouse Jr. taking him 3 wide on intermediates, and he'll respond by fading back to 12th place and quietly lurking back into the top 5. That is not an ideal recipe for long-term wins and success, especially here in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. Many of NASCAR's faithful have longed for a rough, edgy racer like this since the passing of Dale Sr., and so far Hailie Deegan in her own right is putting forth an early sample of that aggressiveness. In terms of the long term, Hailie Deegan seems committed to a widely successful NASCAR career, even if it means a couple detours along the way. She seems content with patiently climbing up the ladder and excelling in the full-time opportunity on her hands. For example, if she fails to garner consistent results in, say, the Truck Series, you'll likely see her remain in that division rather than jump to Xfinity and rush into the NASCAR Cup Series. You look at some young, recent prospects like Ryan Blaney, Daniel Suarez, and Eric Jones here in their first handful of Cup campaigns. They've yet to make that elite step towards contending for wins and championships, and honestly, it has to do with them getting to the big leagues too soon. In fact, YRB never raced full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and was instead promoted to the Wood Brothers 21. She has the mentality of a veteran at this insanely young age, eyeing the best long-term plan here in the sport of NASCAR. Finally, she's made it clear that she's a racer and she doesn't intend to cash in. Now sure, a multi-million-dollar corporation is going to throw money at her talents to cash in on a woman driver and the publicity Deegan will get in the future. With that said, she wants her branding and marketing image to focus on racing and being a recognizable NASCAR driver. This contrasts greatly from Danica Patrick, as once GoDaddy graced her race car, she became more focused on becoming a brand rather than a successful racing star. GoDaddy gal cashed in on her big name, and to many in the public eye, she's more recognized as the girl in Super Bowl ads, modeling posters, and acting as Aaron Rodgers' girlfriend than anything she's done on the speedway.
Hey, I know you.
Yeah.
You're that GoDaddy girl.
At least early in the going, Hailie Deegan doesn't want to go down that path, and she wants her publicity to come from behind the wheel. When you combine her colorful personality and presence on social media with the above characteristics, it could create a mainstream phenomenon for the sport of NASCAR. Back in the early 1990s, NASCAR had a cult following, but not many fans outside of the South had an interest in stock car racing. That all changed when Jeff Gordon, a young and vibrant wheelman, brought his talents to NASCAR and started earning success almost instantly. He was unique from the traditional blue-collar Southern racers, and with winning races and championships at an early age, he rivaled the sport's intimidator Dale Earnhardt. This caught the attention of mainstream America and led many to grow a greater interest in the growing sport. With the Rainbow Warriors' rise to fame, it prompted the rise of the casual racing fan, and new facilities were constructed in Las Vegas, Chicago, and Texas to expand outside of the traditional South. In terms of Hailie Deegan, she could become the closest thing to a pop star and revolutionize an entire generation and era of NASCAR racing. Thousands of fans jam-packed Daytona and Bristol just to hear the symphonies of Deegan's high-powered engine and watch her put on a spectacle behind the wheel. She becomes a household name, gets a lot of outside attention, and prompts NASCAR to rise to staggering heights and increases in the 2020s. With that said, you have to pump the ARCA brakes extremely hard, or at least check up to avoid maximum damage. Today, Deegan officially becomes an adult, which means she still has a long journey to climb into a NASCAR Cup car. She has raced very minimal starts in ARCA and is yet to even get behind the wheel of a truck, Xfinity, or Cup car. The harder to drive cars and tougher competition provides a challenge for the driver, and success does not always pan out, advancing to the next level. For example, Todd Gilliland was a top-tier racer in K&N, winning back-to-back championships and scoring 13 victories to his name. As he made the jump to the much more competitive Gander Outdoors Truck Series, the results have disappeared driving for Kyle Busch Motorsports. The North Carolina driver remains winless and is currently outside the Truck Series playoffs with 3 regular season events remaining. He also hasn't improved much from his 2018 rookie season, still making inconsistent mistakes that remain costly here in July. Not to forget, she hasn't raced a lot of the intermediate super speedways ingrained on the NASCAR schedule. Her skill level is incredible on the short tracks, but unfortunately, the 0.5-mile ovals don't make up over 70% of the Cup Series schedule. One of her scheduled ARCA starts is the season-ending race at Kansas, and it'll be interesting to see how she races on the 1.5-mile high bank super speedways that the Cup Series races on a weekly basis. Throughout the 7 decades of the sport, there have been some hyped-up stars crowned the future of NASCAR because of their talents and their will to win behind the wheel. Casey Atwood, J.J. Hailie, and so far Kyle Larson are examples of drivers who underachieved and didn't become the drivers they were expected as they entered the league. Not to forget, many other women drivers such as Erin Crocker, Danica Patrick, and Natalie Decker were seen as glass-breaking talents for women in racing. Instead, they shattered a lot of sheet metal with consistently awful mistakes and performances in decent equipment. It's still possible that Hailie Deegan becomes one of the sport's biggest busts if she fails to win races and contend like she has in K&N. Fortunately, at least here in the present, things look promising for Hailie Deegan. She's gotten praise from Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, and Kevin Harvick for her talents, all of which are former champions in the NASCAR Cup Series. Compared to some of those failed women in racing, Hailie Deegan is starting out in NASCAR at a very young age, and that is going to be beneficial in terms of developing her talents here in stock cars. Ultimately, the more experience with these cars should pan out, and Hailie Deegan should be a top-tier star for the future. Another thing I've noticed is that she could be the final piece to Cars 3's storyline coming full circle. When you remove Lightning McQueen from the equation, this scenario lines up perfectly. If you haven't seen the movie, essentially a bunch of young PC personality cars pushed out the loved veterans of the sport. As a result, you see the Piston Cup circuit become a shell of its former glory. That is, until an unconventional racer comes out of nowhere and completely captures the attention of the mainstream media as the film concludes. Not to mention, that fresh face happens to be a fun and energetic female who got her start on dirt before hitting the pavement. The prophecy so far points to Hailie Deegan as that driver, and if this becomes reality, Cars 3 deserves a 100% score on Rotten Tomatoes for predicting the future, even though the current score right now isn't too bad to say the least. Anyways, it's time for the weekly NASCAR Fantasy Report. Last weekend in Kentucky was an utter dumpster fire besides the fantastic overtime finish to the 400-mile event. In terms of my fantasy picks, the flames spread quicker than a California wildfire, and it was a travesty to behold. Beforehand, time for some positives as Jack Ventresca netted the overall victory with 203 points, and a change for the points lead has occurred in this league. Another left turn had a solid outing in the Bluegrass State as he takes a 31-point lead over Skywagon. It will be a competitive fight until the checkers in Homestead. As for myself, absolutely nothing went right on Saturday. Seriously, Brad Keselowski? He's had 2 poor finishes at the Bluegrass State because of crashes, but after that, he's finished in the top 7 with ease. On Saturday, however, we got the discount version of Paul Wolfe and the 2 team, which gave me a largely disappointing 20th place effort. Meanwhile, MTJ and Kevin Harvick continue to screw themselves over on pit road, making my NBC top 3 picks look as bad as Daytona. Underachieving nights from Daniel Suarez and Alex Bowman gave me an abysmal 117 points in regular fantasy, a low mark for the summer. As for the NBC predictor game, yeah, I would prefer not to discuss results. Moving on to New Hampshire, there will be some rough edges in Lobster Country. The Summer Classic provided a bump and run for the ages last time we were here, so hopefully the racing can thrive with the reapplied PJ1. As for NASCAR fantasy, I could use a strong bounce-back weekend. Kurt Busch is one driver that could have another monster-worthy race, as his statistics in Loudon have been impressive as of late. Meanwhile, Chevrolet Camaro teammate Chase Elliott won a stage and contended for the victory to begin his 2018 resurgence. As long as Alan Gustafson doesn't call 4 tires every stop, he will be a force this weekend. Finally, the Toyota power of Kyle Busch and MTJ will likely come in handy on the Magic Mile. The manufacturer has dominated in recent memory, so it would be foolish to bench the nameplate this weekend. Hopefully the results can be much improved from last week. Please let this be the case. So anyways, this is NRF signing out, and just remember, life's a beach and then you drive.